A short man in expensive clothes is running down a road outside Jericho. You need to understand how strange that is. A wealthy man in first-century Judea does not run in public. Running is what slaves do. Running is what children do. A man with money walks slowly with dignity, surrounded by people who clear the way for him. This man is shoving through a crowd. He is sweating. His sandals are kicking up dust. He stops at a sycamore tree by the side of the road. He hikes up his robe, gets one foot on the lower branch, and pulls himself into the leaves like a boy. His name is Zacchaeus. He is the chief tax collector of Jericho, which means he has bought from Rome the right to extract revenue from his own people. Every person in that crowd below him has been robbed by him. Every person in that crowd hates him. He is one of them by birth and a stranger to them by choice. And he has climbed a tree to see a rabbi. The rabbi comes down the road with a crowd of his own. He reaches the sycamore. He stops. He looks up. And the rabbi from Nazareth calls the most hated man in Jericho by his name. Here is what most people miss. Jesus did not stumble into the company of outsiders. He routed himself toward them. Across 3 years of recorded ministry, the people he sought out were the exact people the religious system of his time had pushed to the margins. Tax collectors, lepers, bleeding women, Samaritans, a woman caught in the act of adultery, a blind beggar, a Gentile mother, a Roman soldier, and at the very end of his life, on a cross outside a Jerusalem gate, a convicted criminal dying beside him. The geography of his feet was a theological statement. This is not a story about kindness. This is not a story about tolerance. This is not a story about good manners around the edges of polite society. This is a story about a God who deliberately walked toward every person his own religion had decided was beyond the line. And there is one man Jesus promised paradise to that he never promised to anyone else. Not to Peter, not to John, not to his own mother. A specific place, a specific day, spoken from one cross to another. We will get to him, but not yet. Because the pattern starts in a tree. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will see 8 encounters in a row that share a single secret. And that secret is the gospel itself lived out in dusty feet. The rabbi looks up into the leaves and says, "Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must abide at thy house." The crowd goes quiet. Then it starts to murmur. He has gone to be a guest with a man that is a sinner. The Greek word Luke uses there for sinner is hamartolos. It is the word the religious establishment used for the people they had written off. Zacchaeus was not on the borderline. He had been formally placed outside the line. A Jew who collected taxes for Rome was treated by his synagogue the way a traitor is treated by his country. Some rabbis taught that you could not even receive change from a tax collector without becoming ceremonially defiled. And the rabbi from Nazareth invites himself to dinner at this man's house, in the middle of the road, in front of the entire town. Here is the part most people miss. Jesus does not ask Zacchaeus to repent first. He does not say, "If you change your ways, I will come to your house." He calls him by name. He invites himself in. And it is at the dinner table, not before, that Zacchaeus stands up and says, "Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor. And if I have taken anything from any man by false accusation, I restore him fourfold." The repentance came, but it came after, not before. Jesus said yes to the man before the man said yes to the change. And then Jesus delivers the thesis line of his entire ministry. For the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was lost. Seek, he did not wait for the lost to come to him. He went looking, but it gets stranger, because somewhere in the early days of Jesus' ministry in Galilee, there is a man on a road who should not be on a road at all. He has leprosy, under the laws preserved in Leviticus 13 and codified centuries later, in the rabbinic tractate Negaim. A leper had to keep his clothes torn, his head uncovered, and call out, Tami, Tame, unclean, unclean, whenever anyone came near him. He could not enter the camp. He could not enter the town. He could not enter the synagogue. He could not be touched. He could not touch. Some lepers had not heard another human being say their name in years. Some had not felt the warmth of another hand against their skin, for so long they had forgotten what it felt like. This man does what the law forbids him to do. He approaches Jesus. He kneels. He says one of the most heartbreaking sentences in the New Testament. If thou wilt, thou canst make me clean. Notice the wording. Not, please heal me. Not, I deserve healing. Just if you are willing. After years of being told he was the unwilling object of God's judgment, he asks if Jesus is willing. And Mark records what happens next with a Greek word that punches through the page. Splanchnistes. It is usually translated moved with compassion. The root is splanchna, the bowels, the guts, the deepest interior. In Greek thought, the seat of the strongest emotion was not the heart, but the gut. Mark is saying, Jesus' insides churned. And then Jesus does the thing that breaks Levitical law. He put forth his hand and touched him. Slow down for this. Jesus could have healed him with a word. Jesus had healed people with a word before. Jesus did not need to touch this man to heal him. Jesus needed to touch this man because the man had not been touched in years. The touch came before the cleansing. The touch was part of the cleansing. There is a Greek word the leper had been wearing for years, akathartos, unclean. It was on his lips every day. It was on the lips of every person who saw him coming. It was the word his religion had given him for what he was. Jesus rewrote it with a hand, but the pattern is not finished because there is a woman in a crowd whose word for herself is the same one. Mark tells her story with more detail than he gives almost any other person. Jesus heals. 12 years bleeding. 12 years ceremonially unclean under Leviticus 15. Anything she sat on was unclean. Anyone she touched was unclean. She had spent every coin she had on physicians, and Mark adds the brutal line she was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse. She has heard about Jesus. She decides on a strategy. She will not approach him from the front. She will not ask. She will get behind him in the crowd and just touch the hem of his garment. Get heal, slip away, disappear back into the anonymity that had been her only protection for 12 years. She gets behind him. She reaches out. She touches the corner of his cloak. And in the same breath, she feels the bleeding stop. But Jesus stops too, and he asks a question no one in the crowd understands. Who touched my clothes? The disciples push back. There are hundreds of people pressed against him. Anyone could have brushed against him. But Jesus knows the difference between a brush and a reach. She comes forward trembling. She falls down. She tells him everything, and Jesus says to her the word she has not heard a man use about her in 12 years, daughter. He did not need to find her to heal her. She was already healed. He needed to find her, to give her the thing the healing alone could not give her, a name, a face, a relationship, a daughter. Stay with me. Because the pattern in these first three encounters is not just kindness toward outsiders, it is something more deliberate than that. Jesus called Zacchaeus by name before Zacchaeus changed. Jesus touched the leper before he healed him. Jesus stopped a crowd to find a woman who had spent 12 years trying to disappear into one. The order is the gospel. The love comes first. The change comes after. And the pattern is about to cross a border his own people would not cross. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a crowd and tried to disappear into it? Not literally, the way the woman did, the way most adults do at some point. The slow math of staying small. Stay in the back. Do not get noticed. Do not get found. Because being found means being seen. And being seen means being known, and being known by the wrong person at the wrong moment has cost you before. If this video is meeting you somewhere right now, the next part is for you. Because the next person Jesus went looking for, he had to cross a border to find. There is a road in first-century Israel that Jewish travelers did not take. It went straight north from Judea to Galilee, through the middle of a region called Samaria. The shorter route, the faster route. The route Jesus' own people refused to walk. They would detour east, cross the Jordan Walk, parallel along the other side, and cross back over near Galilee, adding days to the trip just to avoid setting foot in Samaritan land. The hatred was old. It was generational. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing toward the end of the 1st century, records that in roughly AD 6 to 9, Samaritans scattered human bones inside the Jerusalem temple during Passover. He records that the hatred had been mutual for centuries. By Jesus' day, a Jewish rabbi who stayed overnight in a Samaritan home was treated by other rabbis as if he had stayed in a brothel. And John, writing his gospel, says one strange sentence about Jesus heading north from Judea. And he must needs go through Samaria. The Greek there is edi. It is one of those small, loaded words. It does not mean he chose to. It does not mean it was convenient. Ede is the verb of divine necessity. When John uses it about Jesus, he is signaling something theological underneath the geographical. This was not a route. This was a mission. Pay attention to this. Because the person Jesus was crossing the border to find did not know he was coming. She arrives at a well outside a town called Sychar. It is the 6th hour noon, the hottest part of the day. Other women come to draw water at dawn or at dusk when the air is cool and the social circle of the well is at its fullest. She comes at noon, alone. The hour no respectable woman draws water. The hour. A woman comes when she does not want to be seen. She has been married 5 times. She is currently with a man who is not her husband. In a culture where a woman's identity was almost entirely tied to who she belonged to, she had lost her location 5 times over. And the rabbi from Galilee is sitting on the edge of her well. He asks her for a drink. That is the first miracle of the scene. Not the water turning to anything. Not a healing. A Jewish rabbi asking a Samaritan woman for water from a cup she had touched, which under the rabbinic interpretation of the day would have made the cup ceremonially defiled the moment her hand left it. He drinks from her cup before he tells her anything about herself. By the end of the conversation, she has run back into her town, abandoned her water jar at the well, and she is telling everyone she knows about a man who told her everything she ever did. Could this be the Christ? And her town comes back with her, and they ask Jesus to stay, and he stays for 2 days. A Jewish rabbi spent the weekend in a Samaritan town. because a woman at a well met a man at her well who asked her for a drink. But the pattern is not finished. Sometime later in the temple courts in Jerusalem, the religious authorities drag a woman in front of Jesus. They say they caught her in the act of adultery. They do not bring the man. Levitical law required both. They bring only her, which tells you the trap was not about her. The trap was about Jesus. If he says, "Stone her," he loses every crowd he has built who came for mercy. If he says, "Do not stone her," he is publicly contradicting Moses. Jesus does something the text does not explain. He stoops down and writes in the dust. Nobody knows what he wrote. Scholars have argued about it for 2,000 years. The text just says he wrote, then he stands. And he says 9 words that have echoed in every courthouse and every confession booth since. "He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her." And he stoops again, and he writes again. When he stands the second time, every accuser is gone. The eldest left first, then the next, then the next. The text records the order beginning at the eldest, because the eldest had carried sin the longest and felt its weight first. Only Jesus and the woman are left. He asks her, "Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee?" She says, "No man, Lord." And he says, "Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more." Slow down for the order. "Neither do I condemn thee" comes first. "Go and sin no more" comes after. He did not require her to change her life before he refused to condemn her. He refused to condemn her, and the new life flowed from being refused condemnation. The order is the gospel, again, and the pattern is about to find one more border to cross, outside a different city. At a gate, with a man who cannot see, there is a blind beggar sitting at the gate of Jericho. His name is Bartimaeus. Mark gives us both his name and his father's son of Timaeus Bartimaeus, which is unusual. Mark almost never names the people Jesus heals. He preserves this one. Jesus is leaving Jericho. A crowd is with him. Bartimaeus hears the noise. He asks what is happening. They tell him Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. He starts shouting, "Jesus, thou son of David, have mercy on me." The crowd tells him to be quiet. He shouts louder. Jesus stops. The whole crowd stops. He says, "Call him," and Mark records the detail that breaks your heart. Bartimaeus throws aside his cloak. In the 1st century, a beggar's cloak was the beggar's entire economy. It was his blanket at night, his coat in the rain, and the cloth he spread out in front of him to catch coins during the day. Throwing the cloak aside was throwing away the only thing he had. He threw it away before he was healed. He committed to the new life before he could see it. And the pattern is about to cross one more border, the biggest one. The biggest border in Jesus' world was not geography. It was blood. A Gentile mother from the region of Tyre and Sidon, modern-day Lebanon, hears that Jesus has crossed into her country. Her daughter is demon-oppressed. She finds him. She begs. And Jesus' first reply is the most uncomfortable sentence he speaks in any gospel. "Let the children first be filled, for it is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it unto the dogs." Most preachers skip this verse. Skip. Most preachers smooth it over, explain it away, soften the metaphor. Dogs was the word 1st century Jews used for Gentiles. Jesus voiced the metaphor his culture had given him. And then this Gentile mother does something nobody else in any gospel does. She takes the metaphor. She does not flinch from it. She turns it inside out and hands it back to him as theology. Yes, Lord, yet the dogs under the table eat of the children's crumbs. Read that slowly. She did not argue against the metaphor. She argued inside it. Fine. If we are dogs, even dogs get the crumbs. She is using the language of exclusion to prove inclusion. She is doing rabbinic argument with the rabbi, and the rabbi stops. He says to her, and this is one of the only places in all 4 Gospels where Jesus is changed mid-conversation by what a human being says to him. For this saying, go thy way. The devil is gone out of thy daughter. She is the only person Jesus ever heals because of what she said. For this saying, for this argument, for this courage, your daughter is healed. She did not need Jesus to be softer. She needed him to extend the table, and she pulled the table out further with one sentence. The pattern is widening, because the next outcast Jesus encounters is also a Gentile. But this time, from the other end of the spectrum, a Roman centurion comes to him in Capernaum. He commands 100 soldiers stationed in the very town Jesus calls home. His servant is dying. He approaches the rabbi whose people his army is occupying, and he asks for help. When Jesus says he will come to the centurion's house, the soldier stops him. Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof. Speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. He understood authority because he held it. He commanded by word, and his soldiers obeyed by word. He recognized in Jesus the same kind of command, only infinitely greater. The Greek word Matthew uses for Jesus' reaction is ethaumasen. It means struck with wonder, marveled. There are only 2 recorded moments in all the Gospels where Jesus marvels at a human being. One was the unbelief of his own hometown. The other is this, a Roman soldier. I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And this is where the pattern arrives at the place we have been waiting for. Imagine for a second a person sitting in a parked car outside a church. The service started 20 minutes ago. They have not gone inside in years, maybe ever. The keys are still in the ignition. The engine is off, and they are doing the slow math in their head. The math everyone does eventually. I waited too long. My story is too far gone. They would not have me now if they knew. The window for me has closed. That math is the exact math the thief on the cross was doing as he watched Jesus die beside him. There are 3 crosses on Golgotha. The middle one is the rabbi. The 2 beside him are what Tacitus, the Roman historian, called the cruelest and most disgusting punishment Rome had reserved for slaves, foreigners, and the worst criminals. The Greek for the men beside Jesus is lestai, not petty thieves, insurrectionists, violent men. Rome did not crucify minor crimes. Rome crucified to make a public statement. One of them mocks Jesus. The other one turns his head, and he says 6 words, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. He has nothing to bring, no baptism, no years of devotion, no good deeds in reserve. He has a few hours left. He has ruined his life. He has earned this cross. And he turns his head and says the simplest sentence in the entire New Testament, Lord, remember me. And Jesus answers him with the most theologically loaded word he ever spoke. Today shalt thou be with me in paradise. The Greek for paradise is paradisos. It comes from the Persian for walled garden. It is the exact word the Septuagint uses for the Garden of Eden, the garden Adam was exiled from. Sit with that for a second. The first person Jesus ever promises paradise to is a convicted criminal at his last breath, not a disciple, not his mother, not a believer of decades. A man Rome had decided was disposable, and Jesus uses the word Adam lost. The garden has been reopened to a thief on his last day. Augustine of Hippo, preaching this scene around the year 410, said it like this: "The first to enter paradise after the resurrection of Christ was not a prophet, not an apostle, not a martyr, but a thief." This is not a story about a deathbed conversion. This is not a story about a loophole at the last minute. This is not a story about how much sin you can get away with. This is a story about a God who saved his final promise on this earth for the person who had nothing left to offer and was offered everything anyway. So here is what to take away from 25 minutes of watching Jesus walk toward the people his religion had walked away from. First, the pattern is consistent across 3 years of recorded ministry. From a tax collector in a tree to a criminal on a cross, the people Jesus sought out were the exact people the religious system of his time had pushed to the margins. He did not stumble into their company by accident. He routed himself toward them on purpose. The geography of his feet was the theology of his heart. Second, the order in every one of these encounters matters. Jesus called Zacchaeus by name before Zacchaeus changed. He touched the leper before he healed him. He drank from the Samaritan woman's cup before he told her anything about herself. He said, "Neither do I condemn thee," before he said, "Go and sin no more." He promised paradise before the thief had done anything to earn it. The love came first. The change came after. It always came after. Third, somewhere right now there is a person doing the math. They are sitting in a parked car, or staring at a ceiling at 3 in the morning, or scrolling through a feed at lunchtime, trying to look busy. And they are doing the calculation everyone eventually does. I waited too long. My story is too far gone. The door has closed for me. The thief on the cross did that math. And then he turned his head, and the door he thought was closed had been held open the whole time. Which of these 8 encounters hit you the hardest? Which one are you sitting with right now? Tell me below. I read every comment. 2,000 years ago, on a dusty road outside Jericho, a rabbi looked up into a sycamore tree and called the most hated man in town by his name. 2,000 years ago, on a cross outside a Jerusalem gate, the same rabbi turned his head toward a criminal and called him today. The same voice, the same pattern, the same door.